Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Shabbat Shalom. We'll try again, just to make sure everyone's on the same page. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you for being here. A special thank you to our choir, who has joined us tonight as well, to celebrate our new members, whom we are glad to welcome to our congregation and to the celebration tonight. This is a service that's connected to our connections to the Jewish people. And so the theme of the service is Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. You'll hear that song a couple of times through our service as well. It's a chance for us to feel our roots, but also feel our Jewish family connections all over the world. For many people, the last few weeks have been particularly trying and challenging, thinking of those connections, the pain that our Israeli branch of our family is dealing with, and of course, many people living here have family there and vice versa. So we understand that our people is hurting in this time, and that is why we feel the need to reinforce those connections even more strongly through this challenging season. We'll begin with a nigun. A nigun literally means a melody. It's a way of singing together where the words don't matter as much as the fact that we are in fact singing, and singing with our cultural tradition and with each other. We'll do our conventional Shabbat nigun, which is bim bam. The words aren't actually in the service, but they're pretty easy. They are bim bam, bim 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 bam, and Shabbat Shalom. So as you feel comfortable, please feel free to join me. Bim bam, bim 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 bam, bim 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 bam, bim bam, bim 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 bam. Bim, 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 bam. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Bim, bam, bim, 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 bam, bim, 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 bam, and just hum. Shabbat celebrates our connection to the Jewish people. The Jewish people gathers for special occasions. On the New Year or Passover or Hanukkah, we are part of a community greater than ourselves. Every week, we can welcome Shabbat together and feel the same connection. Life is made sweeter by personal connections and by special celebrations. Shabbat is a time for both. To light our Shabbat candles this evening, I would like to invite Lynn Miller, who is the chair of our Connections Committee, to step forward as we sing Baruch HaOr. Let us light these lights.
Shalom, Baruch
Roots come in many forms. They come in family tradition. They come in personal memory. They come in our connection to the soil and to its produce. And so when we share wine, we share roots. Our roots in the soil, our roots in our people. And of course, wine is impossible without time. And so our roots across time connect us to each other, to our heritage, and to our future. As we share wine together, we share life. This evening I'll sing our Kiddush in Hebrew. If you'd like to join me, please do, and then we can say the English all together. Savri Moranan Rabbanan De Etmol, Kiddashnu Et Hayayin. Savri Moranan Rabbanan De Hayom, Baruchim Aborim Pri Hagafen, HaShabbat Mesamcheinu, HaShabbat Merapeinu, Legufotenu, Lenafshotenu, HaShabbat Me'ashreinu, Baruchim HaShomrim Et Yom HaShabbat. Together in English. The rabbis and sages of old proclaimed, we sanctify this wine. The rabbis and sages of today proclaim, blessed is the fruit of the vine. The Shabbat makes us joyful. The Shabbat heals us in body and in spirit. The Shabbat enriches us. Blessed are those who keep the Shabbat. L'chaim, l'chaim, to life. The Jewish family is our family. Every family, every people is unique. Every group has special talents and wisdom and experience. Celebrating the Jewish people is not a claim of superiority. Our roots are important to us, and pride in our roots is a healthy emotion. The Jewish people has experienced the best and the worst that the world could offer. The Jewish people has learned the worst and the best of human emotions and moral behavior. And through all of it, the Jewish people has remained a people and has survived. The Jewish people lives. Please say with me, the Jewish people lives.
Israel, Israel, Ami Israel, Am Israel Chai v'Kayam. Israel, Israel, Ami Israel, Am Israel Chai v'Kayam. Am Israel Chai, Am Israel Chai, Am Israel Chai v'Kayam. Am Israel. Israel, Am Israel, Chai v'Kayam.
Humanistic Judaism is a product of Jewish history. In the beginning, the Jewish people saw themselves as a chosen people. They believed that piety would lead to good treatment by the universe. Their keys to survival were religious belief and action, and their solutions to problems were prayer and community. The wicked would suffer, and the righteous would be rewarded. The course of human history, especially Jewish history, has challenged this belief. The universe does not share our moral agenda, as the wicked survive and the innocent suffer unjustly. The traumas of Jewish history are our star witnesses. If the universe does not care about justice, we must create it. If the fates are indifferent to human suffering, we must respond. Jewish history has taught us the importance of human action and human responsibility. Let us live that lesson. Together, the Jewish people lives. Our first language is our mother tongue. At birth, we can learn any language on earth. Soon after, we learn the language sounds we hear every day, the language that expresses our thoughts and our dreams. In the lifetime of the Jewish people, we have spoken many languages. We have adopted native languages in our own way. By writing new sounds in familiar Hebrew letters, we created new words and new stories. Through it all, we continue to teach and to learn the building blocks of Jewish expression, the Hebrew Aleph Bet.
changing once again, and yet once again, comets Alever, changing once again, and yet once again, comets
The Jewish people is not only roots and a tradition. The Jewish people is hope for the future. We have survived many centuries, and we have constantly changed to meet new challenges. There have been times when our future looked bleak, with little hope of success. At those times, our strength lay in our power to hope. Hope is the ability to look to the future, to see what may be, and to make it happen. As Herzl said, if you will it, it is no dream. I invite those who choose to do so to stand as we sing Hatikva. Thank you. Please be seated. A song of praise by the Israeli poet Yehuda Amichai. I will read this poem first in Hebrew and then in English. Shir Hallel. אני רוצה לשיר שיר הלל לכל מה שנשאר פה איתנו ולא עוזב ולא נודד כציפורי הנדוד ולא בורח צפונה ולא דרומה ולא שר ליבי במזרח ואנוכי בקצה מערב. אני רוצה לשיר לעצים שאינם משליכים את עליהם וסובלים להט קיץ וקור חורף, ולבני אדם שאינם משליכים את זיכרונותיהם וסובלים יותר מבני אדם שמשליכים הכל. אבל מעל לכל, אני רוצה לשיר שיר הלל לאוהבים שנשארים יחדיו לשמחה ולצער ולשמחה, לעשות בית, לעשות ילדים עכשיו ובעונות האחרות. Song of Praise. I want to sing a song of praise to all that remains here with us and does not leave, and does not wander like the migrating birds, and does not flee to the north and not to the south, and does not sing, my heart is in the east and I am at the edge of the west. I want to sing to the trees that do not throw out their leaves, and withstand the blaze of summer and the cold of winter, and to those people who do not throw out their memories, and withstand more than those people who throw out everything. But above all, I want to sing a song of praise to lovers who remain together for joy and for pain and for joy, to make a home, to make children now and for the other seasons. If you're comfortable standing, could I ask you to stand again for just a moment? At Kol Hadash, each month, one of our Shabbats is dedicated to remembering those of our loved ones whose yahrzeits or anniversary of their death occur at this time of year. And so tonight we remember with great love Lena Bernstein, David Bolnick, Bernard Brook, Maurice Cohn, Joe Collins, Jack Cottle, Donald Doman, Tamara Dworsky, Pauline Fleischer, Israel Friedman, Earl Gasquion, Dusica Gavrilovich, Sam Gilbert, Olive Gleave, Doris Goldberg, John Gustafson, Shirley Layson, Regina Mayer, Jean Merkin, Beth Rabin Music, Jeannie Parker, Matthew Passon, Miriam Saponov Pinko, Margaret Pollock, Bess Richter, Sandy Saracen, Robert Schoenbrod, Ben Sosowitz, James Vanderbeck, David Weiss, and Marie Yellen. Each of us have names, faces, memories that are dear to us. I invite you to remember your loved ones at any season of the year, and at this time, let us pause for a moment of silent reflection. In Jewish life, we say, Zecher Tzadikim Livracha, the memory of good people is a blessing to us. Please be seated as these words are sung. And now I'd like to invite David Hirsch to come up and let you know of some upcoming events in the congregation.
Shabbat Shalom. It is indeed good to be together, and welcome to all of our new and newish members. There's a lot going on. I'm only giving a small sampling. Remember that all of our events are in the weekly emails, in the Shofar newsletter, and on our website, kolhadash.com. If you have questions, feel free to contact our administrator extraordinaire, Jeremy Odens, at info@kolhadash.com. We have two events coming up Sunday for the little ones. We have the preschool Jewish discovery for ages 3 to 6 on Sunday, this Sunday at Deerfield High School at 9:30, and then following it at 10:30 is the Sing Celebrate. These are focusing on Tikkun Olam, and that's for the first one's for 3 to 6, the second's age 0 to 2 with a grown-up, and please register online, and you can ask the rabbi about details for either of those. On Mondays, including this upcoming Monday the 6th, our Women's Canasta group meets to play and eat, and my mother in the front row is the contact for that. Our nonfiction book club is reading Humanly Possible, 700 Years of Humanist Free Thinking, Inquiry, and Hope by Sarah Bakewell. That's on Monday, November 6th at 7:30 on Zoom. Ilya Tallman is here somewhere. There you are. Is the contact for that if you have questions on that one. We have a couple adult ed things going on. The rabbi has a lot of videos, and you can do a Jewish culture self-study. And there will be a meeting on Thursday, November 9th at 7:30 on Zoom about getting started with that self-study. The regular Tuesday adult ed will be on Who Wrote the Bible on Tuesday, November 14th at 7:30 in person and in Zoom. 6:30, okay. Ooh, that'll mess people up. Our next adult Shabbat service is 1 week from tonight on November 10th, and the rabbi will talk about 1 month of war. Our Values in Action Committee continues to do work with the Highwood Food Bank at the Fort Sheridan train station on Friday, November 17th at 2:45. Tony is your contact for that. And finally, I just want to invite everyone to a really fun and wonderful experience. The Maxwell Street Klezmer Band and the Junior Maxwell Street Klezmer Band are going to come to Sunday school on November 19th at 10:30 at Deerfield High School. It is open to everyone. If you haven't seen them, if you haven't celebrated, with all that's going on, it's a wonderful feel-good experience. Please join us. It's wonderful. Again, all of our information is in the Wednesday emails, kolhadash.com, and in the Shofar newsletter. So again, Shabbat Shalom, and I turn you back to your regularly scheduled rabbi.
Thank you, David. To my left is our congregational menorah. Its 7 lights remind us of the 7 days of the week, but also in this season we remember the seal of the modern state of Israel, which is indeed the 7-candled menorah that once stood in the temple in Jerusalem some 2,000 years ago before its destruction by the Romans. But we treat this candelabra as an evolution of a Unitarian tradition, where in the Unitarian Church they light candles of joys and concerns. For us, we light candles of simcha and suras. Simcha are joys, suras is difficulty or difficult moments. It's a chance to share what Yehuda Amichai described as joy and pain and joy, the full circuit of life. It's a chance for us to find out if there's something wonderful happening in your life or the lives of people you care about, a chance to light a candle in concern for someone facing a difficult time, or a candle of memory for someone whose absence strikes you particularly strongly at this season. And I'd like to take the opportunity to light our first candle in honor of all of our new members who are here tonight. If you wouldn't mind, could you please stand for just a moment? Anyone who joined in the last couple of years, the congregation, we're so thrilled to have you as a part of our congregational family. Thank you very much. And I'll light this first candle in your honor. You can sit down now. And so now I'd like to turn it over to you, if you'd like to come forward and share perhaps your name, but also the reason behind your candle lighting, and then to light a candle in honor or in concern or in memory of someone important in your life.
Well, it's my dad's yard site coming up on the It's my dad's yard site coming up on the 13th, and I'm lighting this partially because of that. Oh, this wick. I think my dad would have been really devastated right now. His full name was Ben Zion Sosowitz, and his parents and his 3 siblings all made Aliyah to Israel, some before and some after statehood. And Helga and Daniel and I were in Israel in February, where we met 52 of our, I don't know how many now, relatives there. Entire side of my family's there. And I just wanted to light a candle because we're thinking of them on a daily basis. They are devastated by what's going on. And, you know, I know we're probably all concerned and keeping track of the news, but I think my dad, this would have really been crushing for him to see what's been happening. So I'm hoping for the best for them and lighting this in their honor.
half the group is up here. So this is an update. About a month or two ago, I mentioned that my grandfather had 3 children. My father, whose name was mentioned tonight, David Balnick. He had 8 grandchildren. I'm one of them. He had 22 great-grandchildren. My niece was mentioned tonight. And 49 great-great-grandchildren. Of those 49 great-great-grandchildren, none had the name Balnick. None. All the women changed their name. The men had sons who didn't have sons. None. But 9 days ago, my son and his wife had a child, and his name is Balnick. So number 50 of the great-great-grandchildren finally has the last surname. But that's not what I want to talk about. That's not why I'm lighting the candle. It has to do with his name. My daughter-in-law wanted to name the child Brian after her father. My son felt like if his name is after her father, they should name the child after me. So they named the child Brian Richard. Well, I was always told in the Jewish religion, you don't name a child after somebody who's alive. And so I talked to somebody, and I asked him about that. And our rabbi said, well, actually, that's only an Ashkenazi tradition. The Sephardic Jews do name after somebody who's living. Well, that felt better. But then I asked a friend, and the friend said he thinks that the rationale for it is that if the angel of death comes down and wants to take 96-year-old Richard Balnick, and the angel of death gets confused and takes 2-year-old Richard Balnick, there'll be a problem. A, I don't believe in the angel of death, and B, if there was one, I'm convinced he could tell the difference. So I'm just happy that we have a Balnick finally.
Well, tonight, I was delighted when I saw Larry. Oh, sorry. Tonight, I was delighted when I saw Larry and Julian here. And then, of course, we heard the list of people with Yortzeit, and I had not put together that it was Tammy's Yortzeit. But Tammy is Larry's first wife, Julian's mother, and we were close friends when she was alive, especially when I was pregnant with my 2 sons. And the memories are just wonderful. I miss her every day, I really do, more so than much of my family, because she was just wonderful, and it's good to have you and to be with you, even at a time like this.
Last night we had our monthly steering committee meeting, and I am so grateful for the wonderful leadership and the volunteers who do so much for this congregation. I often refer to this congregation as the little congregation that can, because we do it ourselves. And I was reminded of this because Sam Gilbert's name was read this evening. And Sam was our second treasurer, and patient, and ingenious, and creative, finding ways to finance things and finding money we at the time didn't have. But Sam was able to do all of it and put it all together and balance everything. And when we were going through all sorts of, we didn't know what to do, Sam was absolutely a steady rock and held us together. So thinking about the wonderful leadership of this congregation and remembering the phenomenal Sam Gilbert.
I'm going to light this candle for Lynn's mom, whose yahrzeit is tonight. And she was a wonderful inspiration to be a Nana. And we do miss her right now.
Yeah, I know, I talk quietly. I'm lighting this candle because my dad's yahrzeit was on October 28th, and before also for all of what's going on in Israel and to any innocent bystanders in the Arab world. My dad and his brothers and sisters escaped Vienna in 1939, and they survived Kristallnacht. My aunt was not picked up. The brothers were, and they got beaten the crap out of. My dad had hidden a church that night. And we're all still here. But my aunt ended up not in America, and she ended up in Israel and in Shadmat Devorah, where we still have family in the Northern Galilee, and I'm concerned about them. And I think all of them would be rolling around in their grave knowing what's going on now. But I don't have good answers for any of it, and I miss my dad, and it brings back a lot of troubled things for me because I see innocent people dying, and I see people used as human shields, and I also see people getting killed who shouldn't be, and it's just awful. So this is for everybody who's going through war. Have a good night.
There are times we face difficult moments, and the sun comes out the next day. Two of our special pieces of music tonight will be shared by our choir. They are first a medley of Over the Rainbow and It's a Wonderful World, which you may recognize. And second is a song of courage entitled Kol Ha'olam Kulo, All the World is a Narrow Bridge, said Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav. The important thing, he said, is Lo lefached klal, do not be afraid.
Zar Ma'o, Gesher Zar Ma'o, Gesher Zar Ma'o, Kol Halam Kulo, Gesher Zar Ma'o, Gesher Zar Ma'o.
Every now and then, I open up a newspaper. Well, I don't open up newspapers anymore. I open up the web page for a newspaper, or I'm emailed a link to an article, an op-ed piece in the Washington Post or the Huffington Post or the New York Times. And the op-ed writer says, I'm a Jewish person who isn't really that religious. I don't think I believe in a God. I don't really want to pray to one that I don't believe in. But I still want to celebrate Passover. I still want to find meaning in Yom Kippur. I still want to light Hanukkah candles. So I guess I have to invent my own way to do it from scratch, all by myself. When I hear of these articles, I read these articles, I get 3 people emailing me the same article. Part of me says, yes, another one of us. And part of me says, Again? Someone doesn't know how to use Google? Can't find us? Why does this happen over and over again, that people think they have to reinvent the wheel, that they're the only one out there who thinks this way, who feels this way? Well, it's no longer a big deal to be Jewish and to not be conventionally religious. 80% or more of American Jews do not keep kosher. And a large proportion of American Jews don't even believe in a conventional idea of God. There's just too many of us out there. Everybody knows somebody who fits that category. In 2020, the Pew Research Center conducted a study of American Jews, and it found that over 1/5 of American Jews do not believe in the God of the Bible and also do not believe in any kind of higher power or spiritual force. So even if you make it fuzzy, they still don't believe in it. They are a no. And so that's well over 1 million American Jews who fit that description. So you'd think that secularized Jews could find each other. But the problem is that these individual secularized Jews who might have been raised Reform or conservative or even Orthodox, they still believe that Judaism has to be religious. Even if a Jewish person can be secular, Judaism needs to be religious. It needs a God. It needs a Torah as a binding source of commandment. It needs prayers and blessings that invoke a God, which, if you're secular, you're stuck with, because that's what you say, the blessings. Maybe they're nostalgia, maybe they're irrelevant, maybe they're even alienating to what you actually believe, but too bad. Judaism is religious, you're stuck with it. And because of that belief, this liberated individual who's no longer personally, conventionally religious They think that they're weird to want to find secular ways to celebrate Judaism. We had someone find our congregation who had children in high school already. He had married a Catholic woman who wanted to raise the kids Catholic, and they did. He was fine with that. But he himself had always been a secularized Jew, and he found our congregation, and he was so excited. He brought his wife to high holiday services, and she was disturbed because she thought he was the weirdo. And now here's a room full of people who are saying the things he says and who are celebrating Judaism the way he does. These secularized Jews out there who write these op-eds reinventing the wheel, they don't even know what to Google or how to Google it, what might be out there. They can't even imagine that there were organized Jewish communities of various kinds of secular Judaism over 100 years ago. They don't even imagine that they could find other people who agree with them today, who've already traveled that road and found each other. And so the op-ed writer reinvents the wheel again, or finds the least objectionable religious Judaism to conform to, or simply leaves behind Judaism altogether for the secular world. And so I say to all of you tonight, both here and online, Yasher Koach, congratulations, well done. You've found us. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to ponder, what shall I say when I light Hanukkah candles? There's a whole booklet of options in the lobby and on our website. You can also invent your own. We're happy to empower you to do that too, but you don't have to. Organized humanistic Judaism started 60 years ago, but you might not realize that humanistic Judaism itself was built on a foundation of previous secular Jewish experiences, sort of like an archaeological tell where later civilizations build on those that came before. I want to share with you 5 layers of earlier secular Judaisms, and you might find that these help define you or your family's experiences, or they might influence your own approach to your own Judaism. The oldest layer of secular Jews goes back to a few centuries before the year 0, so the last couple centuries BCE. We find in later books written in the Hebrew Bible, questioning, challenging. It's often condemned in certain passages. There's a passage in the book of Kings, for example, that says, the people who are terrible who say, let us eat and drink for tomorrow we die. Enjoy this life and, oh well, that's it. I actually made that into a t-shirt. That's part of our message. This is the life we have, let's enjoy it. Or in the book of Proverbs, I believe, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. Well, evidently someone back then was saying that, if they want to call them a fool. So there's the questioning impulse, but there's also even sources that made it into the Bible itself, that question. Think of the book of Ecclesiastes, recently read during the holiday of Sukkot, that wonders, do good things really happen to the righteous? Are the wicked really punished, or is it all the same? And we have to live our best life here and now because who knows what happens after? Or the book of Job, which challenges that claim of divine justice and is told in the end, who do you think you are? Doesn't say he's wrong, but it says, who are you to challenge the powerful God? Or the powerful Oz? Sounds similar. But these made it into the canon, these questions, these challenges. And by the first few centuries of the Common Era, there was a term for that kind of Jew. It was an apikoros. Apikoros comes from the Greek philosopher Epicurus. And if you read Epicurus, he sounds like us. Don't worry about the gods. They don't care what happens to you. They live their own existence far away from humanity. This life is the only life we know. Do not worry about an afterlife because when we die, the atoms disperse. The best thing we can do in life is to enjoy each other, to enjoy simple pleasures because those can always be met, and to treasure friendship and the good life. Sounds pretty good. But to the rabbis of that era, it was bad because you weren't following the commandments. You weren't worried about the world to come. And so they called the Jewish heretics who lived that Greek Hellenistic lifestyle apikoros or apikorsim. They were the heretics of Rabbinic Judaism. The preeminent apikoros was a man who actually was a rabbi originally. His name was Elisha ben Avuya, but in rabbinic literature he became known as Acher, the other. because they didn't even want to mention his name. The story goes that he would be sitting in the house of study, and when he stood, the Greek books he was hiding in his lap would fall to the ground, revealing the fact that he wasn't actually paying attention to the law being discussed. An anecdote is related that he went into the house of study and he told all the rabbinic students who were there, "What are you doing wasting your time with this? Go out and be a painter, build a house, make something, do something with your life." I know some yeshivas in different parts of the world that could use that message even today. And the most famous story of Elisha ben Avuya was a day that he was out in a garden and he saw a man violate the Sabbath to steal a bird with its mother's eggs, with the eggs of the mother all together, breaking the Torah commandment, and get away. And another man waited until the end of Shabbat, climbed up the tree, shooed away a mother bird, and took only the eggs, following the commandment. And on descending from the tree, he was bitten by a poisonous snake and he died. Immediately after the commandment to shoo away the mother bird and only take the eggs, it says in the Torah, "Do this and you will live a long life. You will be rewarded." And Elisha saw this incident and he said, "Where is this man's long life? Where is his reward?" And in the retelling of the story, supposedly he said, "Leit din v'leit dayan." There is no judge and there is no justice. The challenge of Job, right? But going one step further to say not just there is no justice, but maybe there is no judge. Well, what happened to these Hellenistic Jews, those who were attracted to this Greek philosophy? Some of them became subsumed under Rabbinic Judaism. They found their way back into the mainstream. Some of them became the ancestors of what was called the Romaniot community, which dates back to Roman times, but was a prominent community in Greek and Italian territories until the Holocaust. And some of them ultimately became Christians, because after all, when Saul/Paul went around to preach, he went to synagogues. And he was preaching to Jews, but mostly Hellenistic Jews. There's even echoes of this period in modern Jewish practice today. Do you remember what you eat at the end of the Seder? The last thing to have? It's called the afikomen. But the afikomen comes from a Greek word, epikomenos, which means what you eat at the end of the meal, or dessert. There are little clues of Greek thought and culture that make their way into the Talmud, into Jewish sources, and so the influence of the Epicurus trend and the Epicurus Jews continues. Now, between the early rabbinic period and modern times, we have a second layer. This is what I would call the rebel. Now, Sherwin Wine, who was my rabbi, one of the founders of Humanistic Judaism, would try to claim an underground tradition, that there were always skeptical Jews who secretly passed on their teachings or disagreed with the rabbinic consensus all along. I don't find a lot of evidence for that in the sources. We might want there to be that, but that doesn't mean there is something there. But what there was instead was a kind of domesticated skepticism, where you can find passages in the Talmud where rabbis argue with God, or rabbis challenge some of the consensus opinions because it doesn't make sense to them. And so they're not fully secular, but they're secularish. They're on the way. You have, in the 9th century, a man named Chiwi al-Balchi who lived in Central Asia, who questioned the Bible so powerfully that the preeminent rabbi of his day, Saadia Gaon, had to write a rebuttal. We don't actually have Chiwi's book. We have the rebuttal, but it lets us know that he was there. In the 12th century in Italy, an author wrote a book called The Voice of the Fool, where the fool criticizes the major claims of Rabbinic Judaism so effectively that you begin to wonder whether the author really meant it and didn't mean that he was as foolish as he claimed. And most famously, in the 1650s, Baruch Spinoza was expelled from the Amsterdam Jewish community for sharing his truth about God, Israel, and the Torah. For him, God was the universe, not a personality who intervened. Israel was the nation of Israel when it lived in the land, and after it was gone, that's not a basis for an ongoing identity. And for him, the Torah was the law that the Israelites gave themselves when they lived in their own kingdom. And when they were no longer there, they had no basis for law. So with no law and no Israel as a state and no personal God, Spinoza was beyond the pale and was expelled from the Jewish community. There were some of these rebels who repented and returned. Uriel da Costa, for example, in the same era of Spinoza, was forced to recant and return. And there were others who left Judaism behind. Solomon Maimon wrote an autobiography detailing his grappling with Jewish faith, or Heinrich Heine, the famous German poet, left his Judaism behind as he said he wasn't any more religious as a Christian than he was as a Jew, but his conversion was his passport to European culture. Some will debate whether Maimonides was one of these rebels in the closet. Some would say yes, some would say no. Well, as we can say, you have your Maimonides, I have my Maimonides. Now, in the pre-modern period, to be Jewish was to be part of an ethno-religion. It was a peoplehood, it was a set of religious beliefs, and those were one and the same. There was no line between the two. But with the dawn of enlightenment, scientific revolution, the 19th century, and the opportunity to be a citizen, now what does it mean to be Jewish if you can be a German citizen, an American citizen, potentially a Russian citizen? Well, now there are many ways to be Jewish as you experience democracy, integration in Western Europe and the Americas, and a rising ethnic nationalism with less chances for freedom in Eastern Europe. The Enlightenment, the Romantic movement and its response, the scientific and industrial revolutions, mass migration, all impacted Jewish ideas and identities. This is the period of the birth of Reform Judaism, and then Orthodox Judaism responding to Reform, saying you've gone too far, and then Conservative Judaism finding a place in between Orthodox and Reform. It was also the period of a birth of a myriad of varieties of secular Judaism, and I'll share with you just three. The first was a universalism. Many secular Jews in the 19th and early 20th centuries worked for a global proletarian revolution. Most Jews in that period were not doctors and accountants. They were working in factories. They were part of the working class. And communism at the time was anti-Semitism. And so they found fellow travelers in that movement. It was a movement that promised a utopia, a kind of secular messianism, but of course it was also anti-religion. Remember, Marx said religion was the opiate of the masses. And so if you were a secular Jew who was in the working class and was inclined to support a global proletarian revolution, who wanted to be part of a bigger team than just Jewish workers, I can be part of the workers of the world, then I might join an organization called the International Workers' Order, or the International Workers of the World. In fact, the International Workers' Order was organized by language sections, and the Yiddish language section was by far the largest of any of the language sections in the International Workers' Order. And probably plenty of the people who listed themselves as speaking Russian or English also were Jewish. So Jews were a predominant part of this movement because they were leading the vanguard of international identity, of a kind of cosmopolitanism. Remember, to be a cosmopolitan is to be a citizen of the world, cosmos and polis. You are connected to every human being. A famous revolutionary, Rosa Luxemburg, wrote, "I have no special room in my heart for Jewish suffering. My suffering is with any suffering people anywhere in the world." That's the cosmopolitan, the universalist. They might have acknowledged a Jewish background, Jewish birth, Jewish family, but in the end, they were part of this world culture. If you saw the movie Oppenheimer, you saw a little bit of a peek into a world called ethical culture. Ethical culture was a movement founded by a former Reform rabbi named Felix Adler, who wanted this universal culture of ethics and progress and cosmopolitan identity. So that was one idea, one possibility for secular Jews. A second one was to connect to that ethnic nation in diaspora. The vast majority of Jews in the late 19th century lived outside of Israel, and their experience of being Jewish included their persecution as Jewish people, not by their beliefs, not by what they ate, especially in Eastern Europe, where the bulk of Jews in Europe lived. They were an ethnic group with their own language, their own customs, their own schools, their own communities. And they demanded respect for that identity and some autonomy, the right to run their own affairs. The ideology of these diaspora nationalists, they sometimes use the Yiddish phrase, Doigkeit. Doigkeit means here-ness. Do is here. We're here in this country, we speak the Yiddish language, and so we want to adapt and adopt and shift our government's approach to acknowledge our nationality and our right to be a part of this, just as Lithuanian nationalists and Polish nationalists and Ukrainian nationalists want the right to use their language and have respect for their culture. Often these diaspora nationalists were socialists, just like the communists, but they wanted to maintain an active and a future Jewish identity. When the first socialist Jewish schools were formed in America, they debated, do we want to just make socialists, or can we teach them Jewish history? Can we teach them Yiddish language? Can we teach them to celebrate Jewish holidays? Because after all, we want to make Jewish socialists, not just socialists. If you've heard of the Bund in Europe, or the Workmen's Circle, now Workers' Circle in America, these were an expression of this kind of diaspora nationalism, or the historian Shimon Dumdov was another example, less socialist, more bourgeois. In the end, these secular Jewish communities and schools had to choose what was relevant from Jewish culture. There was a vicious debate over what Bible stories to include, because after all, they agreed religion is the opiate of the masses. But if you want to be literate in Jewish culture, you've got to read the Bible, and there's a lot of God in there. So what do we do? My mother grew up in one of these communities, and in that community's Passover Haggadah, it described how Moses parted the Red Sea. It's news to me. If you read the Bible, it isn't Moses that parts the sea, it's God. But if you make Moses the magician, then it's not God, it's the story, but it's shifted a bit. They even debated which holidays do we celebrate. Some were an easy choice. Passover for socialists, easy, right? Workers' rebellion, stick it to the bosses. Works out very well. Purim, that worked well, right? Undermine the despotic authority. Hanukkah, rebel against the outside powers. All good. Yom Kippur, atonement, fasting, probably not. Simchat Torah, no. Shavuot, no. May Day, yes. And different communities debated. There was even, I love this line in the discussion that was printed about this. They wanted to celebrate the Russian Revolution, but they couldn't decide which one. Do they do it in March? Do they do it in November? Do they do it in October? Do they do it in November, depending on the count? It was a big debate. And it split communities over which Russian Revolution they really wanted to celebrate. But they were celebrating Jewish holidays too. They were creating a secular Jewish identity for the next generation. And the third option was a nationalism, but a nationalism that included a political nation. Today we call this Zionism. Remember, in the 19th century, there was a lot of nationalist fervor in Europe. It led to World War I, unfortunately. But you had this principle that came out of the Versailles Treaty called ethnic self-determination, national self-determination. If you have a distinct language, a distinct culture, a distinct religion, a distinct identity, then an ethnic nation could demand some kind of political sovereignty, instead of being forced to live under a multi-ethnic empire like the Russian Empire with all of its ethnicities, or the Austro-Hungarian Empire with all of its ethnicities, or the Ottoman Empire with all of its territories. The Jews who became involved in early Zionism were not waiting for a Messiah to bring them back to Israel. One of their early slogans was, Beit Yaakov lechu nelcha, House of Jacob, let's get up and go. Don't wait, move. The kibbutz movement was started on action and on a secular and practical Zionism. Let's move, let's set our roots in the land literally, and let's create the new Judaism and the new Jew. They used to say, livnot et ha'aretz velehibanot ba, to build the land and to be built by building the land. It will change us, not just the territory. These were largely secular Jews who made new communities, new holiday celebrations, new ritual symbols, and a reinterpretation of tradition. They created a public space celebration of Purim, not in the synagogue, but in the street, a festival they called Ad Lo Yada, from the line that you should drink so much you can't tell the difference between Mordechai and Haman. Ad Lo Yada, until you cannot know the difference. They made it a public festival. It's like the Jewish Halloween, because everyone gets in their costumes and goes out in public and has street fairs and juggling. And that's something new. It's a new interpretation of the old festival. Those kibbutzim reinterpreted Shavuot. Originally, Shavuot was a harvest festival for the summer, but it had become the harvest of the Torah, and it was all about Torah, Torah, Torah. And now again, it was about fruits and harvest from the kibbutzim. One of their most famous songs of the Guardian organization they called Hashomer, the Guardians, was based on a line from the Psalms that says, "The Guardian of Israel, the Shomer Yisrael, neither slumbers nor sleeps." Now in the in the book of Psalms, it was about God. But in the song of the early Zionists, it was about the people, the guardians who do not slumber and who do not sleep. Now the peak of these secular options, the secular Zionists, the secular Yiddish diaspora nationalists, the internationalists, was before World War II. You had political parties in Poland for both the Zionists and the Bund who won seats in the Polish parliament. In 1935, secular Jewish schools in America enrolled 20,000 students. 10% of all the young Jews getting a Jewish education were doing it in some variety of secular Jewish community. There was even a famous example in upstate New York where there were 3 summer camps around the same lake. One was called Camp Kinderland, and that was the International Workers' Order Universalist Socialist Camp. They sang the Internationale in Yiddish when they raised a red flag in the morning. The second group was Camp Kinderwelt. That was the Bund, or the Workmen's Circle camp. They sang the Bund anthem, Die Shavua, in Yiddish when they lifted the Bund flag in the morning. And the third camp was, Kinderring was the, you had I'm trying to keep them straight. There's 3 of them. There's Kinderland, Kinderwelt, and Kinderring. So Kinderland was the International Socialist. Kinderring was the Workmen's Circle, because it was the Arbeiterring in Yiddish. And Kinderwelt was the Labor Zionist camp. And there, they sang Hatikva in Yiddish and in Hebrew when they lifted the Zionist flag in the morning. They were on other sides of the lake. They would not talk to each other. How dare you deal with those other people? But they were all varieties of secular Jewish community. Well, what happened to them, those 20,000 students in those schools? Well, there are many factors for the decline of these secular Jewish alternatives. First of all, they were very attached to Yiddish language, many of them. And after World War II, the closing of immigration to America, even before that, the integration to America by generation, Yiddish didn't last. It faded. A second weakness was many of them were attached to socialism and leftist politics. And as you may know, the late 40s, early 50s was not a good time to be connected to socialist politics in America. Also, the late 40s and 50s were actually a good time for economic development. Jews became more affluent. They did start becoming doctors and accountants. They earned more money. They had a house with 2 cars in the suburbs. Who wants a socialist revolution when you have 2 cars in your house in the suburbs? They also moved out to suburbia. And when you're not living in a dense ethnic neighborhood where everyone's speaking Yiddish and everyone is connected to Jewish community in that way, you're out in the suburbs, and what are the Jewish institutions people join? They might join a JCC, parallel to a YMCA, but they'll also join a synagogue, because that was respectable. It was the Eisenhower era, where Eisenhower supposedly said, I don't care what kind of God you believe in, as long as you believe in something. The communists were the atheists, and anybody who was secular was suspicious. And so you joined a synagogue. It might also be that you married someone who was more religious than you. And the secular person said, okay, I'll acquiesce. We'll do something more religious. I went to a release party for a book on the history of secular Yiddish camps. It was held at a synagogue in Skokie. The audience was full. It was a jam-packed room. Many of them were younger people who had brought their parents, who were in their 70s and 80s, who had been part of this world of secular Jewish camping. And what was amazing was that the book was printed with a CD of music from these camps. And they started playing one of the songs that was common to many of these varieties of secular Jewish camps. It was called Arum dem Fire, Around the Fire. Arum dem Fire, mir singen Lieder. Around the fire, we sing songs. They played it, and everyone started singing in the room. They probably hadn't sung those songs in 40 or 50 years, but it was part of who they were. And in the Q&A afterward, I asked the author, I said, what happened to all these secular Jews? And she said, well, you know, the McCarthy era did a lot, but many of them simply acclimated to the broader accepted model of Jewish community, which in the 50s, 60s, 70s was join a synagogue in the suburbs. And so they did. In the end, of course, when Humanistic Judaism started in 1963 and 1964, some of each of those options were still around. There were still Workman Circle schools and Sholem Aleichem Institute schools, but they were not as robust, and they were beginning to show their age. There was a need for something new. And what Humanistic Judaism did was it combined the strengths of a religious community, having professional leadership, having a full Jewish holiday calendar, not grappling over what to do about Yom Kippur, having a full life cycle, not saying, if you want a bar mitzvah, go find a rabbi. We could do it ourselves. Answering the big questions of life with philosophy and not just make up your own mind. And what a humanistic Jewish community could do is take those traditional elements and fill them with the relevance and meaning of a secular approach to life, the empowerment of a positive humanist philosophy, a creative approach to Jewish culture, and the creativity of a secular Jew standing in a humanistic synagogue and saying, all of Judaism is mine also, because it was made by the Jewish people. It's all mine to choose from. Now, I do have a hope. My hope is that in the future, this will be less uncommon. 15 years ago, this happened for the first time. A couple found me to officiate at their wedding because they were shopping for ketubas online. And they found a ketubah that was labeled humanistic. And they thought, wow, I really like this. I wonder if there are humanistic communities. They had the buzzword, the Google search term, and they found us. They found me. We've had generations married by humanistic rabbis and by humanistic ceremonial officiants. We've had generations of people educated in our communities. It's easier than ever to find us from anywhere in the world. I recently did a wedding for a couple who's, if you do the math, 3/4 Jewish. One of the partners had a Jewish parent and a non-Jewish parent. The other had 2 Jewish parents. They're from New York City. They had roots in Chicago, but hadn't lived here for many years. But instead of writing an op-ed in the Huffington Post saying, how are we going to celebrate our wedding? We're secular, but we're very Jewish, and we want to include things. They found us. They found me. And they said, that's us. This is who we are. We enjoyed a beautiful humanistic Jewish wedding celebration where they wrote their own vows and they created a new 7 blessings that their friends offered to them. We included breaking of the glass and a chuppah and other traditions that were valuable to them. It was a marvelous connection of the personal, the Jewish, the secular, and the inspirational. Another generation from now, I hope, an op-ed will start the same way. I'm a secular Jew. I was raised more religious. I'm not sure how I'm going to celebrate Hanukkah this year. And then I Googled, and look what I found. Well, I hope you enjoyed this journey through the history of secular Jewish identities. I want to thank our choir again for their marvelous accompaniment tonight, as well as our musical accompanists as well. I want to thank the host of our pre-Oneg, the Millers, Elliot and Lynn, and I want to also thank the host of our post-Oneg waiting for us in the lobby, Leah Sosowitz and Helga Grunbauer. Our closing song we already sung once in the service. It's called Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people lives, symbolic not only of the secular Jewish people that live, but all Jewish people everywhere that live as one people. And I invite us all to sing together to close our service.
Yisrael, Yisrael, Ami Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Yisrael, Yisrael, Ami Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Yisrael, Yisrael, Ami Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Yisrael, Yisrael, Ami Yisrael, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam. Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai, Am Yisrael Chai v'Kayam.
Once again, I wish you a Shabbat Shalom. Please wish Shabbat Shalom to the people sitting near you.